The premise for this video is, I'll admit, a bit off the beaten path, a bit odd, but it's something that occurred to me recently. Being a cinephile, being somebody who has had, his imagination largely shaped by movies, and someone whose childhood was, as you know, as a Gen Xer, and as you know, if you know me anyway, regardless of my the generation that I belong to, somebody for whom the Star Wars movies, the original trilogy, was very informative of my early development, as far as imagination goes. I find myself pondering the notion of an alternate world in which there is only one Star Wars movie, and that only one Star Wars movie is the movie that, as they say, identifies. It's the first movie, but it identifies as the fourth movie, and it also identifies as A New Hope. But it was never episode 4 or chapter 4. What are they? I can't remember right now what they. Episode 4, A New Hope. It was never called that in its original inception. It was just called Star Wars. Just Star Wars. And I'm contemplating a universe, an alternate Earth in which Star Wars, not Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, but just Star Wars, was all that we got of Star Wars. Now, why am I contemplating such a thing, and what are the implications of such a notion? Well, when George Lucas made Star Wars, the movie Star Wars, it was not this guaranteed blockbuster by any means. It was kind of a, mid-level, middling budget, fairly large budget for the time period, but not just through the roof kind of budget when it comes to special effects. You watch the original Star Wars, which you can't do, I don't think, unless you actually get it on VCR. Because it's not available. The only the updated version with the updated special effects and all of the kind of cringy CGI stuff that's in a few of the scenes that Lucas put in, because he's a perfectionist, and because he wanted to perfect this product of his, and also the very controversial scene that he tried to change, where Han Solo doesn't fire first at Greedo, but Greedo, in fact, takes out a gun and fires at him, and Han Solo's then just shooting him back in self-defense. But that scene, if you watch the Han and Greedo scene, where he makes Greedo fire first, it looks terrible. It looks just does not work. But anyway, we get so say that all that we ever got of Star Wars was Star Wars, and the version that we got was the version with mid-70s special effects, certainly not terrible, and pretty good, actually, pretty good special effects for the period, but nothing that incredible by today's standards. And all miniatures, no CGI whatsoever, because that wasn't around yet. And just Star Wars the movie. Star Wars as a self-enclosed story with a beginning and an end, and no need for anything to be added, no need for there to be a sequel or two sequels even. I'm not going to say or 5 sequels even, because the Disney trilogy absolutely does not count. But the original 2 sequels, the 2 sequels of the original trilogy, do count in my mind. And yet, in the scenario that I am envisaging, those 2 sequels don't exist. They were never made. And all we've got is the original movie. Now, this is a movie that I've seen probably 300 times. I'm guessing. That's just a rough guess. Just for since it came out in 1977, a long time ago, not in a galaxy far away, but many years ago, and it's been available to watch a lot of times ever since, and I have availed myself of watching it many times ever since, and it's still my sentimental favorite of the 3, even though I do acknowledge Empire Strikes Back is the best made of the 3. I go with the geek consensus on that one. But for me, as far as sheer enjoyment, as far as sentimental value, it's Star Wars, not Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, but Star Wars. So what would have happened if that movie that George Lucas made in 1977 was released, and it did all right at the box office, and some people went and saw it. Maybe it recouped its earnings, so maybe even made a mild profit, but not enough to warrant this franchise that it became. And what if it thus became just this standalone, just this movie that stands all by itself, and there are no other movies made in the universe that Star Wars is set in? What then? Well, in some ways, this would be a more innocent world, because in Star Wars, we never find out. Luke never finds out that Darth Vader is his father, and I don't know if there's any consensus about this, but my impression from watching the movie, even now, watching it now, my impression is if Lucas intended for Darth Vader to wind up being Luke's father, the evidence of that from the movie is pretty slim. There are a couple things, like where Obi-Wan is talking to Luke, and he says, there was your father was a good man, and then there was another. He was the best pilot in the galaxy, and he was a good friend of mine. And but then this other guy named Darth Vader betrayed and murdered your father. So that's all we know about the origin of Darth Vader, that he was this other guy who came out, who manifested himself and turned evil, or maybe he was evil all along from the beginning, and he killed Luke's father. Well, if Star Wars is all that exists, then we never hear otherwise about Luke's father. And the only other line in Star Wars where Luke's father is mentioned is the scene in which Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen are talking, and Aunt Beru says, you can't keep him here forever. He can't just be a farm boy on Tatooine forever. He's just got too much of his father in him. And Uncle Owen says, that's what I'm afraid of. Now, looking back in retrospect, that seemed like a highly portentous line. Like Uncle Owen knew somehow what Luke's father became. I'm not even going to call him Anakin Skywalker, because there was no mention of Luke's father's name in Star Wars. So if Star Wars is all there is, if it's a self-contained film in and of itself, then we're not going to introduce anything that was introduced later, even when it comes to names. So we have a more innocent world in a way, although there's still some real there's some violent scenes in Star Wars. For a movie that was rated PG at the time, you could be PG, you could be pretty hardcore to some extent and still be PG back in the 70s. There's a couple of dismemberings, like when Obi-Wan gets down and dirty, when the alien bully is picking on Luke in Mos Eisley, in the Mos Eisley cantina, and he swings into action, and then there's all these these sound effects, and there are all these limbs lying about, and that's pretty hardcore. But then also, in addition to that, there's the scene where Luke runs back to his home, or what had been his home, and sees, although we only see it from a distance, he sees like these sort of charred corpses. His home is burning, and he sees what appear to be these two charred corpses. These had been, the only parents he ever knew, Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru, and they've been burnt to cinders by the evil stormtroopers because they were looking for the droids. And that's pretty rough. I mean, that's even though there are no close-ups, it's not thrust in your face, and if you're it's done with enough delicacy that if you're young enough, you don't even exactly know what happened. I don't know if I even knew as a kid. I don't know if it even registered to me. His uncle and aunt died. And granted, his uncle was kind of a son of a bitch, kind of a grumpy old man, but he didn't deserve to be killed by stormtroopers and burnt to a crisp. And his aunt seemed like a really nice lady. So that's pretty difficult to take in. But yet, and also the scene where Han just shoots Greedo. Now, granted, Greedo was threatening Han. He was saying, "I'm going to take you to Jabba the Hutt, and that'll be the end. He wants you dead or alive, and I just as soon take you dead. And I've been looking forward to this for a long time." He even says that in his own Greedo language. So he's clearly acting threateningly, but we still have, again, the gunslinger Han Solo just blowing him away, just reaching for his gun, shooting him dead, and his head falls onto the table. So, there are some things about it that are, it's a violent world, and there, of course, all the pilots who die in the attacking the Death Star sequence, including poor Porkins, the big fat guy who died, the first to perish in the raid on the Death Star. There's a lot of death. There's a lot of screaming, as the ship blows up and all of that. But at the same time, all's well that ends well. Luke becomes a hero. He uses the Force. He destroys the Death Star. He gets the medal from the princess who he's in love with and who Han has flirted with a little bit. So there's a suggestion of a love triangle there, but nothing about them being brother and sister. And I don't think that was intended in the original movie at all. Not in the least. I don't even know if Lucas knew he was going in that direction in Empire Strikes Back, because in Empire Strikes Back he has them kiss. Like she kisses him for like an extended length of time. She gives him a big wet smooch on the lips for like 5 seconds or more. It's not it's not a brother or sister kind of kiss. So what am I trying to say here? What's the point of all of this? I guess that I'm fascinated by the idea of this story, which is really a self-contained story. It has a beginning. It has it has an end where good triumphs over evil. The only loose thread is that Darth Vader survives. He's out on his ship when the Death Star blows up, and then when Han Solo comes to the rescue and shoots down the other TIE fighters, he only sort of wings Darth Vader's ship, so it just sort of flies away wildly, but then he recovers his equilibrium out in space. But for all we know, that destruction of the Death Star was the end of the Empire. There's nothing at the end that would tell us anything other than that. We would think that would be the case because, I mean, it was a huge structure, and you would think that all the dignitaries, all the really important people, like all of the Grand Moffs, including good old Grand Moff Tarkin, Peter Cushing, he would think that they would that you would think that this would be a pretty much a death blow to the Empire. So yeah, Darth Vader's still around out there, but that's it. As far as loose threads, there's really nothing else. There's no. I mean, there's sort of the suggestion, oh well, Luke can maybe develop more. He can maybe grow more in the Force and maybe become a Jedi, like his father, who did not turn to evil, because we were given no information about that. So anyhow, it ends, and the movie comes out, and enough people come to see it that it does all right, but it doesn't do good enough to warrant them making any sequels, and it certainly doesn't do well enough to for there to be a huge for it to become a huge franchise, which later gets absolutely decimated and destroyed by Corporation Disney, and the monster it would later become in this foul world of ours. But back in the 70s, I mean, it wasn't that things weren't great in the 70s, but just imagine a world in which we were somehow saved, our innocence was rescued, because the hero, the hometown boy, who suffers this kind of unimaginable loss of his entire family, but then goes on the famous hero's journey and matures and grows and comes to be able to use the Force in such a way that enables him to become the hero, to destroy this emblem of evil and death and destruction, wanton destruction that is the Death Star. If that's the note that we end on, and that's it, then I can't help but think that would be somehow a beautiful thing in a way. It would be bad that we wouldn't get the sequels, the original trilogy sequels, and I even enjoy the prequels. I know that there's by no means a consensus on that score, but for me, everything but the Disney trilogy is still worthwhile. But to have a world in which we only got one Star Wars, and it was just Star Wars. It was just a generic title, Star Wars, not Star Wars A New Hope, but just Star Wars, okay? And it was called Star Wars because it was about a war in the stars, among the stars, a war in space, okay? By the way, an early book of mine that I tried to write, never completed, when I was 11 or 12 years old, was called Space Wars with the Burdarians. And we also, I had a Super 8 camera, or my dad did really, but I used it. Me and I got some of the kids in the neighborhood to try to do movie versions of it, and those versions are still out there in Super 8 reel somewhere in some attic. Got no idea where they are right now, but I'm sure they'd be worth a fortune if they were discovered. Just to show you the kind of influence that it all had on me. So anyway, so we end with this self-enclosed story, and I keep making a fist because somehow this signifies like the beginning and the end. It's like it's like a rounded kind of symbol, signifying something that is self-contained. Doesn't need to be added to, right? Because everything happened in Star Wars. It's like all the stories of all the rest of the movies is sort of distilled down to its essence in Star Wars. The triumph of good over evil. The boy, the callow youth who goes on a hero's journey and grows and becomes a hero despite adversity, despite losing his mentor Obi-Wan along the way. He gains new friends. He grows into. He takes his first step into a wider world, and then that's it. What if the rest were just left to our imagination? What if Star Wars itself, years later, was looked at as a kind of cult classic, right? Not this major blockbuster with all of the merchandise and all of the everything that's emblematic of the big Hollywood American movie. But what if it's just this sort of much more humble kind of sci-fi movie, that came out of the 70s, that came out of this era, this new era of filmmaking, where there was a lot of creativity, and there were a lot of great auteurs working, some with higher budgets than others, but you had people like Lucas and De Palma and Scorsese and Cimino and all the rest of those Italian Americans. They talk about the Jays a lot, but it's the Italians. The Italians were dominating the directorial stuff, except for that guy Spielberg. But anyway, what if it just becomes another one of those movies, like American Graffiti by Lucas, like The Godfather, like The Conversation, and other movies from that era. I can't help but thinking that in a way things would be better. We would be spared something that we were not spared in this this timeline.